The Supreme Court's Chief Justice temporarily halting an order intended to allow the Title 42 border policy to expire tomorrow. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky has the latest.
An urgent deadline this morning that could impact migrants seeking asylum at the U.S. border. The Supreme Court's Chief Justice John Roberts placing a temporary hold on Title 42, a COVID pandemic-era restriction that makes it easier for the government to turn away people attempting to enter the country. The High Court giving the Biden administration until 5 p.m. tonight to respond to the decision. Before the Supreme Court's order, the White House said it was looking for an additional $3.5 billion in funding to help prepare for the anticipated influx of immigrants.
If Republicans in Congress are serious, if they want to help the men and women at the DHS, they certainly will assist and get this funding to us.
The Department of Homeland Security also responding to the Supreme Court, writing in a statement, "We urge Congress to use this time to provide the funds we have requested for border security and management." This week, El Paso, Texas declared a state of emergency. The Texas National Guard deploying 400 additional troops to the border city on Monday. The mayor sharing their community has been preparing for a surge of undocumented immigrants, some forced to sleep on frigid streets.
We're going to continue to proceed as if it was being lifted.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott, one of several GOP leaders fighting to keep the policy, writing, "The court order is a step in that direction. This helps prevent illegal immigration." NBC News' Guad Venegas met one family from Venezuela who told him they plan to cross after Title 42 is lifted.
She's been traveling with her baby for 3 months. ¿Qué ha sido lo más difícil esos 3 meses? She said crossing Mexico is the most difficult thing.
Border officials telling NBC News if Title 42 is lifted, they're expecting even larger numbers. A record 10,000 unauthorized border crossings per day. The impact stretching to New York, where the mayor says the city is nearly out of money, needed to shelter busloads of migrants arriving every week. Many sent at the direction of state officials critical of the federal government's border policies.
So, John Heilman, it's been a mess at the southern border for quite some time. 2022 has been the worst year for illegal border crossings. It's chaotic down there. And we've gotten to a position now where you have Democratic mayors in New York City asking for help on the border, and the same thing with Democratic mayors in San Antonio. And we saw during the campaign a lot of progressive Senate candidates saying, don't lift Title 42. I was going to say, if we do, our border guards are going to be, Border Patrol is going to be overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed right now. Any insights as to why this crisis can't be managed better?
Oh man, well, there's a large scale question, Joe. I think what I think part of the problem with Democratic politics has been that the especially in the era of Trump, where the policies of the administration, including this one, have been seen and not wrongly as being excessively cruel. Not humane, not in the best traditions of how America has thought about immigration. Democrats recoil from that. As I say, I think they recoil from it rightly. But in their recoiling from it, also tend to have this propensity to sort of claim that there's not really a problem at the border. And, to knock down Title 42, you can see the arguments for why the administration is wanting to get rid of it. On the other hand, both in terms of, I think, public policy, in terms of the actual substantive issue itself, and the politics of it going forward, doing that without having an honest kind of appraisal of the situation at the border as a crisis that needs to be managed in a better way, not with the cruelty of Donald Trump, but also not with the kind of blithe indifference that says, hey, there's not really a problem down there, and pretending like it's not like it's not as bad as it is. That's not a winning ticket for Democrats either. And I think part of why Democrats have a problem with this is not being able to kind of find that middle path. And I think for the long-term health of the party and for the long-term health of this administration coming into 2024, they better do it.
They need to find a middle path. I mean, listen, Democrats have won every election recently, so forget the politics of it. Just because It's the most humane thing to do. It's the fairest thing to do. It's how we actually follow the rule of law, and we're fair to people who want to immigrate here from across the world. John Heilman, I know you got to go.
John.
Thank you so much.
Nice work.
Mike Barnicle, I want to follow up on what John said really quickly, though, because it's so important that, and I do understand Democrats reacting the way they did to the inhumane, horrific policies of the Trump administration, the way they use this crisis deliberately, having in meetings, having cabinet members saying we have to separate children from their parents. So we know all of that. So we can have a humanitarian immigration policy that also respects the rule of law. And this is the most important thing, I think. We are a nation of immigrants. We are a nation that likes to think of ourselves also as being fair. It's not fair for us to allow thousands and thousands of immigrants to cross the southern border illegally and stop immigrants coming from Pakistan, from Poland, from across the world. I have no problem with having our immigration numbers go up. It needs to be in an orderly process that's fair to those people. And I saw this as a member of Congress that put in their application wanting to come to America, wanting to build a better life for America, only to be told year after year after year, not now, you have to wait. Not now. We don't have room for you here. Not now. And that's the problem. If we don't do this in an orderly way, it's got to be humanitarian, it's got to be orderly, and it's got to be fair. And right now, Mike, it's none of those three things.
No, and it hasn't been for quite some time, Joe. And you've hit the nub of the problem. But the root of the problem is that this administration and past administrations, let's skip over the Trump presidency, because that was viciously mean. But go back to the Obama administration. They have to address the reality and the root of the problem. What's happening at the border in places like El Paso and spills over to cities like New York, Chicago, Boston, something has to be done about it. It's a riot on foot. And it comes up through countries that we ought to know better, that we ought to be able to help us enforce the border, the American border. How do so many people come from Venezuela or overseas into Venezuela and come up through Costa Rica, come up through Mexico without those governments trying to help us? We give them enormous amounts of money in aid, and they refuse to help us. So we end up with a riot at the border. And you are absolutely right. It's like, think of it this way, coming into your home. You want someone to come into your home, you invite them into your home. These people have not been invited. They are horrendously sad stories all across the border, from Arizona through Texas, all across the border, and in major cities in the country now. But the administration has to step up and actually articulate how deep the problem is. They have not yet done that, and Americans know they have not yet done that.
They need to, because it is such a humanitarian crisis. And as you said, Mike, it is such a sad story. There's so many human tragedies there. I must say, though, for people who say, oh, well, let people keep coming up, let them keep coming in this way. It's not any more humanitarian than saying, oh, we need to let homeless people who are mentally ill stay on the streets and sleep on grates. And if you try to stop that, then you're inhumane. No, that has it backwards. We have to do more. We have to fund homeless shelters more. We have to fund mental health treatment more for those people who need it in America. And for those who want to come to America, we have to provide a more humanitarian, a more rational, a more safe approach here, and also one, Mika, that respects the rule of law. We talk about the rule of law all the time. You don't just apply the rule of law when it fits your ideological bearings. We have laws for a reason in this country, and we need to make sure that those laws are being enforced, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or at the border, and we do it in a humanitarian way.
But it's very, very, very difficult to figure out a solution to this. And I think this is a potential weak area for the administration that they need to shore up, because the criticism is going to be that they can orchestrate an incredible war and humanitarian crisis abroad and handle it with precision, with brilliance, some might say, but can't handle the crisis of the border here at home. And as complicated as it is, needs to be addressed.
It needs to be done. And for people who would use this as a Republican talking point, well, I leave you with this. Before Donald Trump was sworn into office, in Barack Obama's last year as president of the United States, illegal border crossings were at a 50-year low. Put that in your talking points.
Wants to admit that.
Republicans, put that in your Republican talking points. Barack Obama's last year as president, illegal border crossings at a 50-year low. We need to get back to that point.